Hello, everyone. Today I'll be talking about a different topic, that is, my conceptions about absolute and Oriental philosophy, that is, Indian philosophy. We generally have two philosophies, Oriental philosophies as well as the Western philosophies led by the Greeks. So we had the Indian philosophy, in other words, and the Greek philosophy. Now let's talk about Greek philosophy and my conceptions about absolute. As per Indian conception of absolute, we have an entity called Brahman. What is Brahman? That is subject to interpretations. There are various school of thoughts that have different interpretations of the same absolute in a different way. Now there are different schools of philosophies in India, but the primary one is the Vedanta. There is another philosophy that is compatible with Vedanta, that is yoga. So these two philosophies mainly deal with Brahman and deal with Brahman. Now, where from these philosophies have emanated? These have emanated from the Upanishads. Vedanta philosophy has cropped up from Upanishads. It has cropped up also from the Brahma Sutras. The Brahma Sutras are a kind of interpretation of various Upanishads. First Upanishads came, then came Brahma Sutras, then came Bhagavad Gita and other texts. Even some Upanishads came after Brahma Sutras. So Brahman has got different interpretation. There are various schools of thoughts that have interpreted Brahman as a non-dual entity. Non-dual entity means only Brahman exists and nothing else exists. Is it possible? But we all exist, isn't it? How the concept comes? The concept comes that is there, and everything is a reflection of that entity. It's only the reflections that are seen as many and not one. Actually, there is one entity, but since there are many reflections, the one is becoming many. Now, these reflections are at various planes. So it depends upon the plane in which one is, and the higher the plane one is, the clearer the reflections are. This is one school of thought. I will be explaining later on, maybe in this video or some other video. And another school of thought is qualitative non-dualism. Again, non-dualism, I missed the pure in pure non-dualism. I missed one point, and the point is that the absolute, the Brahman, that is absolute, that is the God. Someone may say does not have any attribute, that is attributeless. The God there is attributeless. It does not do anything. It does not have any qualities, good or bad. Now, I remember a saintly person once told me it is uh, just like an iron chain binds us, a gold chain too binds us. So it does not do anything bad, it does not do anything good. Then what it does? It is beyond this good and bad. Good and bad is within the phenomena, but it is beyond that phenomena. It does not do good, it does not do bad. It is just absolute consciousness. Existence, consciousness, and bliss. It always existed. There was never a time when that entity never existed, and there won't be any time when that entity would cease to exist. That is the non dual concept. Then, from where we have cropped up, we were never there. We are that Brahman. We are seeing ourselves in different planes. It's just a reflection. And why we are doing that is because of an entity called Maya, the field. The more you remove the field, the more you clearly see your true self. That's non-dual. That's non-duality. Actually, this is the concept of non-dualistic monism. It has been criticized uh, by various dualists, saying that how can God? You are saying something that is God, and it does not identify himself. How can God does not identify himself? How can God be a prey to the Maya? That is their criticism. May be right, may not be right. I'm not here to judge that. I'll be just stating the points. Now, there is another thing called qualitative non dualism. It also states that yes, the absolute exists, and that is the permanent exists. It has always existed, and it shall never cease to exist, but it does have attributes. Not bad attributes, but all the noble qualities a person may have. It has got all the noble qualities the divine entity, any divine entity may have. It does not have any bad attributes. It does not do bad job. It is always a benevolent creator. It creates. But all the other existences, even there is a concept called individual soul and the eternal soul. The individual soul is called Jivatma, and the eternal soul is Paramatma. Now, one can call it Atma and Brahman. The individual soul, various schools of thoughts call individual soul as Atman and the eternal soul as Brahman. And here in non-dualism, I missed that point. In non-dualism, individuals, there is no difference between individual soul and eternal soul. There is only one thing. You can call it Atman, you can call it Brahman, but there is only one thing, one entity, the one existence, consciousness, and bliss. Now, in qualitative non-duality, in qualitative non-dualism, there is one thing called yes, existence, consciousness, bliss is there. It has never ceased to it will never cease to exist, and there was never a time that it never existed. It always existed. So this thing is there, but yes, it has got attributes. It had got positive attributes. And the Atman, individual soul is the Atman, eternal soul is the Brahman. Atman is inferior to Brahman. Atman is always dependent on the Brahman. Atman is self luminous with the light of Brahman. Atman has a light, but it does not have the universal light. Only the Brahman is having the universal light, and Brahman here is the absolute. Vaishnava school of thoughts given, have identified Brahman with Narayan. Shivas have uh, identified with Shiva. Whatever. They have various concepts, and they are identifying with that. Ishta could be, but most of since Vishishta Advaita, qualitative non-dualism has been propounded by Ramanuja. He was a Vaishnav, so he identified it with Narayan. So that is Vishisht qualitative non-dualism. In Sanskrit, it's called Vishishta Advaita. Again, there is another school of thought called dualism. Now, dualism is what if I ask you a question, do you think you and God are different? Yes, we are different. Do you think God is the creator? Yes, it's creator. Yes, it is the creator. That's how they think. The God is the creator. They have created everything, and everyone is dependent on that God. It is there. So that is duality. But God always existed, and it has created people. That is duality. People are depend, individual soul and eternal soul are different. Now in qualitative monism, what is there, that individual soul and eternal soul are different, but they are interrelated. And here there is no interrelation. All the individual souls are alike, but here all the individual souls are not alike in duality. Eternal soul has attributes, eternal soul does that, and individual souls are dependent on the eternal souls. Individual souls can fall down to eternal damnation as per duality. This concept we can see even in the Western schools, like Western faiths, where individual soul can be damned. In Indian faith, however, individual souls can be damned means it has to take rebirth again and again in bad position. It has to take rebirth to face the karma one has done in different births to get the punishment for the wrong deeds one has done. So that is there here. That is there in the duality. Now all the philosophers who have propounded the school of thoughts have based their concepts in the Brahma Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, and the Upanishads, and those have been interpreted interpreted in very various ways. Shankaracharya propounded non-dualistic school, Advaitavad. He had also interpreted Brahma Sutra. He had interpreted he had his interpretations for Bhagavad Gita as well as Upanishads. He had his commentaries there too. Qualitative non-dualism was propounded by Ramanuja. He had his interpretation. He had his own interpretation. He had now why this is qualitative non-dualism, Vishishta Advaitavad. Now why still he has kept this non-dualism term here, that is Advaitavad. Maybe qualitative Vishishta, where where the eternal soul exists. Eternal soul is the supreme one. It exists, but why he has kept? Because from his childhood he had a guru who was a non-dualist. Again, he had guru who was a dualist and a Vaishnava. So he was a Vaishnava as well as a non-dualist. Now, if someone is a Vaishnava, so bhakti thing is there. So if bhakti thing is there, you need somebody to do bhakti with. Without bhakti, without an entity, without a divine entity, you cannot do bhakti. So that is there. So just to accommodate bhakti into non-duality, which is the Advaitavad cropped up, it's a great thing because there are various stages, and of a person who is starting who is getting into spirituality first has to understand the basics. First, he has to go through duality. Once he gets mastery over duality, once he gets some realization, he will go towards qualitative non-duality, and after that, non-duality. I'm not saying that; those have been said by non-dualist schools. There is a purpose for everything. Everything is great in its own way. That's the beauty of Indian philosophy. It accepts everything with open-heartedness. Again, now there are various Upanishads which have been interpreted in different way. One was Mundak Upanishad. There is an allegory of two golden birds, one sitting in a tree in different branches. So one was a golden bird, the one was which was in the lower branch was enjoying the sweet and bitter fruits of life, while the one in the upper this thing portion of the tree, upper branches, was serene, tranquil, and calm. It never needed anything. Now the one which was in the lower tree, since that bird enjoyed sweets and bitter fruits of life, again enjoying the sweetness, again enjoying the bitterness, again sweetness, again enjoying the bitterness, but somehow it came little higher. It went to the higher branches, but once it became close to that, it finds that it does not exist. It does not exist. Why? Because it merged into that bird. It never existed. Only that bird exists. It was just a reflection of that bird. That's how the non-dualist interpret it. Again, how the dualists interpret. Dualists interpret that when it went to the upper branches, when that bird which was enjoying the sweet and bitter fruits of life went to the upper branch, it stopped. Why it disintegrated? Because it lost itself into God consciousness. It lost in is that's the interpretation. That's their interpretation. It lost itself into God consciousness. So God is there. So since to do bhakti, you need an entity. You need a divine entity with which we can do bhakti. Now, bhakti is primarily a relation of love. That is bhakti. It's not about dogmas and all these things. It's the love between the one, the creator, and the creation. It's the love between the two. That is bhakti. The Radha Krishna prem, this love thing is also like that bhakti only. The divine love, that is bhakti. And from divine love emanates divine compassion, love for all. It's not just love for one. When there is love for that entity, there is love for the entire creation. There's love for everything. On one hand, we love again, there is one thing called with dispassion. There is something called love with passion. There is love with this passion. So love with this passion. Love with this passion means, yes, I don't love anybody. At the same time, I love all. That is love with this passion. There isn't any attachment. There is a difference between attachment and love. In love with this passion, there is only love, selfless love, but without attachment. That is bhakti, and that love is the most pure love for the divine. If someone does not believe in divine, that's pure love for an idea. There are people who are atheists. They're as good as biggest bhaks because they are loving an idea and they are sacrificing themselves for that idea. That is that is a great thing to do. Sacrificing oneself, consecrate oneself to an idea greater than us, and lead a life based on that idea. That is a great thing. A great only people with great mindset can do that. Believing in something and giving the heart and soul, every veins and muscles of one's body and mind towards it. If someone does not do that, that is the thing. Giving oneself to that idea is indeed a great thing in life. So that idea is that is called bhakti. Bhakti maybe for a divine entity or for an idea. An idea is also a different divine entity. An idea could be a socio-political idea too. Having a desire to work for the masses, having a desire for the work for the downtrodden. There are people who don't believe in God, but have a desire to work for the downtrodden. That is a great thing. But whatever, they may not believe in that divine entity, but they believe in some principles, and they are even ready to let go of themselves for those principles. Okay, I'm little bit moving away from the topic. Whatever. Now this golden bird, this thing, allegory, is a great thing. It's a great teaching. It has been taught by all the schools of Indian philosophy, including the theist schools sometimes. Definitely by the theist schools like Vedanta, Yoga, definitely Sankhya. So definitely by these schools too, whichever believed in the concept of soul as a permanent entity. Sankhya philosophy is also great. That also believes in soul, Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha means soul, and Prakriti is the nature, the soul, the spirit, and the nature. Both things. That is Sankhya philosophy. Now, again, let's take another example. In Katha Upanishad, we have an example of the chariot allegory. The chariot allegory uh, makes now, what is chariot allegory? There is a chariot, there is a rider, there is a charioteer, and there are five horses. Now, what these five horses are? As per the chariot allegory, the five horses are the five senses of a person. The Rath, the chariot, is the body. The charioteer is the mind, the intellects. I'm sorry, the charioteer is the intellect, and the reins are the mind. The reins are the mind. Yes, yeah, the reins are the mind, and the charioteer is the spirit, the soul, the jivatma. That is towards his journey towards salvation, towards the Paramatma. That is the charioteer. Not the chariot, the rider, the owner of the chariot. Now when now that is the concept of this thing, that mainly this chariot allegory has been taken up by the dualistic schools to say, okay, it is going towards the absolute. That it is mainly a dualistic allegory, that there is a different this is moving towards God. That's how the Vaishnava schools of thought say that this is moving towards the absolute, the chariot allegory. That's how that is interpreted. Again, there is that is also right. Even the non-dualist schools also say, okay, that is mainly dualistic. I don't find anything non-dualistic here because it's going. And this is making a separate journey. But non-dualistic say that those things don't exist, but everything is Maya. Everything is Maya, and within Maya, within phenomena, let's not talk about Maya. Within there is something called phenomenon world, and there is something called noumenon world. That whatever is within the time, space, and causation is a part of phenomena, and something that is beyond that is a part of noumenon. So in phenomenon world it is having, but once it reaches once it reaches the journey, its destination, it realizes that this journey was never there, it was already there. Already everyone is pure, every person is a pure existence, consciousness, bliss. That's the non-dualistic interpretation. This is Katha Upanishad. All these Upanishads were written around 1000 3000 years back, even more than that. I am saying as far as our scholars, the historians, it may have been written prior to that, 5 6,000 years back, but as per the historians, there, and based on their empirical research, whatever they have said, I'm just talking that is there. That's the greatness of Indian philosophy. That's the greatness of individual thinking, Indian thinking, in how great it is. Even in those days, they had the time, they had they had the time, they had the resources to think about those things. How great the civilization would have been then. Not many civilizations would develop such thoughts. Only the rich civilizations can do that. Greece was also a rich civilization. However, it was an extrovert one, and Indians were an introvert one. It had seas everywhere, but the Greeks were extrovert. Yeah, but Indians had the agriculture, but Greeks probably didn't have that, so it had to go outside and get their contentment outside. But the Indians already had their contentment within. That's how the thoughts could soar so high. There is another concept of this chariot, another chariot allegory, and that was by Plato in Phaedrus. It says that there is a chariot, there are two horses, one with white color horse, another is black color horse. There is one rider, and the rider here is the reason. Rider to the charioteer here is the reason. The white horse is the indomitable spirit of a person, and is the black horse is the sensual pleasures of life. The black horse always moves towards the sensual kinds of things. The white horse is the spirit. It goes for high end activities, for ideas and ideals, and lofty ideas. These things, spirited things, and the reason. It's for the reasoning faculty to discriminate between what is required and what is not required. So what is said that to get salvation, one must be guided by reason. So intellect is the primary thing. If even in this chariot allegory of Katha Upanishad, it says that uh, things, senses are above these things, sense objects. Mind is above this mind, that is the reins is above the senses. Intellect is above the mind, and spirit is above everything. So one has to be guided by this. One has spirit does not think. Spirit is what is called existence, consciousness, bliss, as per non-duality. Intellect thinks. Intellect should be subservient to the spirit. Whatever disturbs the spirit, intellect should have the discriminative power to decide whether it is right or not, whether it is acceptable or not. That's the power of intellect. Intellect should not be pulled by the reins of the mind. The intellect should not be pulled by the senses. Intellect should have the discriminative power to control the mind, and gradually the senses will be controlled, and one will be moving towards a direction. That is important. Whether it is duality or non-duality, it is important. Even in non-duality, it's not that we don't exist. We do exist within phenomena. Our existence is relative existence, but that is within phenomena. There is also another school of thought, Achintya Bhedabhed, that was propounded by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The ISKCON people generally follow that. It is also great. It is also a balance to me. I'm not an expert, but to me, it is a balance of non duality and duality. just non-duality and duality. So non-duality of Shankaracharya and duality of Madhavacharya. Madhavacharya was a Vaishnava. It is partly related to why it can be compared with Vishishta Advaita. It also says spirit, individual spirit, and the eternal spirit are different as well as similar. Yes, again I say individual spirit and the eternal spirit, the Brahman, are individual as well. How can something be different as well as similar? How is it possible? Is it possible? Just like the sun and sun rays are different, but at the same time it's similar. That's how wave and the storms, or the waves and the oceans. These waves and the oceans are similar as well as different. That's how these are similar and different. They are part of that. However, they are dependent on that. That is Achintya Bheda Bheda. How beautiful the Indian school of thought is when we go into it. Even the Greeks had their own thoughts. Greeks had their own thoughts. Even the Western philosophers had their own thoughts. They had believed in pantheism. These are sometimes this could be related. Pantheistic philosophy of the of Spinoza. It has been propounded by Spinoza. It could be. It's just like Vedanta. I think that one spirit permeating every subject and object. One spirit permeating every subject and object, animate and inanimate. That is pantheism. And when we read Wordsworth's Tintinebe, we can find pantheism. How Wordsworth's thoughts developed from sensual things of childhood and to spiritual things. Spiritual things means one subject, one eternal spirit, one Holy Spirit permeating every subject and object. He could identify that with the spirit. So what happened is that it developed. It's just different degree. The kind is same. It developed from sensual to spiritual to intellectual to spiritual. That's how the develop. That these are the phases of people, phases of man who are evolving in spirituality. That's a little bit about my interpretation of Indian philosophy and Indian philosophies. Indian this thing spirituality. Little bit what my understanding. It may be wrong. I've just given my views. I may be pardoned for that. Thank you very much.